Welcome everybody. In response to our last video about the 5 best pet reptiles, if you haven't seen it before, it's right there, right here. Now, click there. Watch it first, then come back. Then watch this video. All right, okay, now you're back. Welcome back. Did you enjoy it? A lot of people did. We've had a lot of really great comments from Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, all over the place. Lots of people have come out, lots of people have voiced their support, and a lot of people have had some really great ideas, potential criticisms, but also things that they loved about the videos, and they've given us a lot of encouragement, which has us really excited about making more of these videos in the future. We wanted to take some time to just respond to a few of these comments that we've had. Let's talk about a few of the questions. We've got one from Reddit user hoorayexplosions asking how often you should handle a corn snake. Fantastic question. Snakes are fun to handle. That's one of the best things about keeping snakes. It is possible to overhandle them. If you find that your snake is not eating, you're probably handling it too much. Keep in mind, there really is no amount of handling that a snake requires. Snakes don't really need social interaction with people. In the wild, they would never have that. They're usually not social with one another, and everything in the wild can kill a snake, so they're easily frightened. That's why snakes feel so comfortable down in holes, and they need little hides and stuff, because snakes spend most of their lives trying to avoid getting killed by everything else in the world. When you're a noodle with a head, the world's a dangerous place. So they don't need to be handled. If you're going to handle them, which is one of the fun things about owning a snake, you can handle them pretty much daily. Like I said, if you find that they're not eating, cut back on the handling, maybe stop handling them completely until they are eating, and then leave them alone for a couple of days after they've eaten, so that they can digest that meal. Sometimes snakes can regurgitate if they're being stressed too much, handled too much shortly after eating. So you want to make sure that they're getting enough to eat, they're not losing weight. But if they're still eating and they're never regurgitating or anything when you're handling them, you're probably good to go. All right, we got a question from Reddit user ChompsonGeckos asking if corn snakes and ball pythons bite at all. Yes, they do. Anything with a mouth can bite you, and corn snakes and ball pythons can definitely bite you. I'm pretty good at not getting bit by snakes. You can tell a defensive snake very easily, or a snake that's confusing you for a meal, which is the main way that you're going to get bit by a corn snake or a ball python. Usually they're going to be very alert and focused on you. I see when a snake is poised like this and looking at you, and you move, it follows you, don't reach at it. That's been my winning strategy for not getting bit most of my life. I don't tend to get bit by defensive snakes or snakes confusing me with a feeding opportunity, because I just don't reach at snakes that are doing that. And you can see this snake here, not interested at all in what I'm doing. But ball pythons, corn snakes absolutely can bite, especially as babies. Usually, and it's going to vary a lot based on the individual. We got a lot of suggestions regarding which reptiles we picked for the 5 best. And I will tell you, spectacular. They were spectacular choices, but they didn't make our list. And I want to talk about each one, why it's great, and why it didn't make our list. Kingsnakes, blue tongue skinks, Russian tortoises, and common boas, BCIs, as they're often known. I've got one of those with me right now. This is actually a Central American boa, which is the same species as the common boa. This is a population that is generally a little bit smaller, though this one is about 7 feet long. That's actually why the common boa didn't make our list. They're big. Like I said, 7 feet, that's a pretty serious snake. Even though they're far more closely related to ball pythons than they are to corn snakes, behaviorally, they're a lot like having a giant corn snake. Personally, they're one of my favorite snakes in the world to interact with. This is my BCI boa, my Central American boa. Love her. Never interacted with a snake that I enjoy like I enjoy interacting with her, but she's big and she's a handful compared to a ball python or a corn snake. While I think this is a great, spectacular second or third reptile for somebody, if you're just getting your feet wet, this might be a little bit serious. Love her though. Another reptile suggested for the top 5, and this is one that we had a very difficult time not putting in the top 5, was the blue tongue skink. I think you could make a very good case for this being the single best pet reptile. Period. They're spectacular. Love them. They're intelligent, good to interact with. They've kind of got a lot of the best features of snakes and lizards, well, other lizards, all in one little package. They're easy to feed, they're easy to house, they don't need too much heat. They're just spectacular. I'll tell you why they didn't make it on the list. 2 things. One of them, and this is not a huge deal, blue tongue skinks actually are a large complex of different species of skinks, all from Australia and neighboring islands. A lot of times the care advice that you get, even though they're all fairly similar to each other, the species are different from one another, and for a brand new reptile keeper, it might be difficult for them to know which species they have and what advice pertains to that species. The bigger deal with these guys is they're expensive and kind of difficult to find. If they were as common and easy to find as a bearded dragon, they would have bumped bearded dragons off of the list in a heartbeat. Blue tongue skinks are incredible pet reptiles, but we're talking something that's going to cost you $200 at least. That's if you can find one. A lot of the reason they're so difficult to find is because they're very difficult to breed and they tend to beat each other up. They can tear each other's legs off and tails off, so people who keep them because they want a great pet reptile are probably not the same people that are going to breed them. And they give live birth to a relatively small number each year. Frankly, if you're going to invest in one reptile and you know you want to have a reptile for the rest of your life, get a blue tongue skink. Another one of the animals that was suggested was kingsnakes, potentially to replace either the ball python or the corn snake. Mind you, we were kind of going for some diversity in the animals that we picked. In a lot of ways, a king snake is going to be very similar to a corn snake, fairly similar size, similar diet, similar housing requirements. This particular individual is a Pueblan milk snake, which is a type of king snake. Other popular ones are California king snakes, desert kings, other types of milk snakes. Truth is, they are spectacular pets. There is a reason that we didn't include them. This snake is a lot more likely to bite you than any of the others. I am pretty good at identifying a snake that's defensive, and I've been bit by this snake. I've only been bit by 2 different snakes in my entire life, and this is one of those 2. But this is my king snake, and I think they're great. So a good choice, a very good choice. But for a first-time reptile keeper, if you don't like getting bit by snakes, I would recommend a corn snake or a ball python potentially over a king snake, even though it's spectacular. Another reptile suggested for the best, or one of the best, 5 pet reptiles is the Russian tortoise. This is a Russian tortoise. Honestly, for a first-time reptile keeper, this is probably the best turtle you could get. I'll tell you why they didn't make the list. Tortoises live a very, very, very long time, and in a lot of ways, that's a great thing. But if you're somebody who's thinking, maybe I'd like to try out keeping a reptile, and you get something that's going to live for like 75 years, you've made a lifetime commitment. This guy will get bigger than this, but not very much. Russian tortoise, probably the best tortoise you can get. Strongly recommend him. Excellent. Like I said, the only reason it didn't make it into the top 5, it's just a lifetime commitment. We also got a lot of suggestions about potential topics for future videos. Spectacular suggestions and ones that we're probably going to take. For example, Reddit user JJHill001 mentioned that in a lot of care videos, they talk about what you need to do, but they don't give you a lot of the why. I love that you brought that up. That's something that we are definitely going to try to focus on, mostly as a result of that comment. So I love it. Also, from JJHill001, they talk about the fact that a lot of places suggest buying a baby reptile when a baby reptile might not be ideal. That's a very good point. There are a lot of reptiles that frankly are easier pets for a brand new keeper when they're older. Babies are probably the most fragile that they're ever going to be during their lives. The truth is, animals are diverse, and sometimes you get babies that aren't going to make it or are going to be very difficult to get started. Starting with an adult can be a lot easier. The main drawbacks, a lot of people tend to connect with a baby reptile and enjoy getting to watch it grow up. Finding adults can be more difficult because breeders don't tend to grow them up, and so when you do find them, you're probably buying them from somebody who, for one reason or another, is getting rid of their pet reptile. You have no idea how that reptile was cared for up until the point you got it, and there are a lot of diseases and stuff that could be virtually irreversible by the time it falls into your care. You might have that reptile for 6 months or a year and it could just spontaneously die on you, and it might be because the people that had it before didn't treat it the way it should have been treated. So it has pros and cons. Okay, Reddit user wallyTHEgecko suggested that we do a worst beginner reptiles video. That's a spectacular idea. We will have to do that because there are a lot of reptiles out there, like ones that you suggested, that oftentimes can be obtained inexpensively, and you think, hey, I've got this little lizard, it's going to be okay in a 10-gallon aquarium, and it's just not. And a lot of times they're full of weapons, they're generally fairly aggressive, and they're a terrible, terrible choice for a brand new reptile keeper, and you wouldn't even know it. and no one will tell you. So we will definitely do that in the future. Reddit user Azraelrs suggested that we should show more morphs for the various reptiles that we're going to talk about. And as we get into more details about individual types of reptiles, you better believe we're going to talk to you about morphs, because morphs are a huge part of the pet industry when it comes to these reptiles. The ease of breeding was a lot of the reason that we picked them, and it's fun for breeders to breed morphs. It's fun to buy morphs because these are common reptiles and you kind of want yours to stand out from the crowd, and morphs often do stand out from the crowd. So we'll be talking all about morphs. We'll talk about inheritance. We'll talk about really cool things that maybe you've never even thought about before. Reddit user Pluto89 with the T represented by a 7 suggested pointing out the good and bad reptile products that are commonly sold. Spectacular. We will definitely talk about things that you should buy and things that you shouldn't buy, like heat rocks, terrible idea, but frequently sold. And we will talk about all kinds of things that you should avoid and things that you should do when building a proper enclosure for these reptiles. So spectacular, spectacular idea. A suggestion was that we go deeper into each of the 5 reptiles that we were talking about. We discuss a little bit more about what it's like to keep them, what it's like to interact with them. We're going to do that. Promise you we're going to do that. We're going to do that with every single one of these 5, and then we're going to move on to a whole lot of other reptiles that are also spectacular pets. We'd also like to give just a thank you to all of you on Reddit, Facebook, YouTube. You guys have been spectacular. You've given us such a warm welcome to the YouTube world, along with a little bit of praise. We also got a fair number of criticisms about our video, and so we want to talk about some of those things. They were reasonable concerns. One of them, from Reddit user _ataraxia, mentioned that you shouldn't regularly feed rats to corn snakes. That's a fair comment. It's going to pretty much come down to how big your corn snake is. Corn snakes actually fall into a group of snakes called rat snakes. As adults, corn snakes do get fairly large. A corn snake can eat probably a small rat. You don't want to feed them an extra large rat. Just like any rodent-eating snake, you're going to need to investigate, study out, we'll be talking about this more in future videos, exactly what size feeder rodents are ideal to feed your snake. But if you have a big enough corn snake, you're probably going to be feeding it rats on a regular basis. Not all rats are the same size, but you're absolutely right. You don't want to feed too large of a prey item to a snake. That can actually lead to the premature death of your snake. So I'm glad you brought that up. Reddit user Ataraxia also felt that ball pythons shouldn't be on the list because of their stress levels. Fair enough. They probably do stress more easily than some snakes. If you are handling your snake so much that it's not eating, you probably should cut back some. In general, though, they're pretty great about handling. They're just more low-key than a lot of snakes are, but you've always got to be careful. You don't want to overdo it, and you can overdo it with a ball python or any snake. Fair comment. I still think they belong on the list. All right, we had a few Reddit users. WorstWarriorNA, Z-Man941, and Pluto89 with the 7 representing the T. They didn't like that we talked about feeding live rodents to snakes. Probably a good thing to mention, especially since we're talking about people who've never kept snakes before. Truth of the matter is, sometimes you're going to get snakes that don't feed on frozen thawed. That is a rodent that you buy that has been pre-killed, it's been frozen, you thaw it out, you feed it to the snake. If your snakes will take those, that's spectacular. Some snakes won't. And so the only alternative to letting your snake starve to death is to feed it live rodents. There are some obvious problems with this. One thing is, a live rodent can carry diseases that usually would be taken care of by the freezing process. If you're buying from a reputable breeder, that's probably not a major concern. Other things, rodents can kill snakes. If you leave a rodent unattended with a snake and the snake doesn't eat it, the rodent will eat the snake. So you never, ever want to leave a snake with an unattended rodent, and so that's a very reasonable concern, and I'm glad that you brought it up. Like I said, sometimes it's a necessary thing, but not ideal. Reddit user _ataxia and WorstWarriorNA both didn't like the fact that I referred to interacting with reptiles as playing with reptiles. I don't really have a better word for it, though. A blue tongue skink requires no human interaction. A ball python, a boa, no matter what you get, they're not social creatures. They don't need you to get them out. If you're getting them out and interacting with them, you're playing with that animal. Now, I think your concern is that it's going to send the message to people that, you know, you can like take your snake out and play fetch, and you can't. Can't do that with a reptile. Good point. What I'm doing right now with this blue tongue skink, I would classify as I'm playing with this skink. I'm having fun. I am enjoying my interaction with this reptile in the way that you interact with a reptile, not in the way that you interact with a puppy. Of course, also not the way that you interact with a football. Don't toss them around. I don't know what else to call it. Frankly, I'm playing. I'm a primate. Primates play. He's not playing. He's just hanging out. Okay, Reddit users, Painted Pythons, Smoldering Designs, and Z-Man941 all hated the fact that I mentioned pet stores instead of breeders, online breeders, and reptile expos. Fair enough. I definitely think that going directly to a breeder, probably the best possible place that you could get a pet reptile. I will mention though that when you get to a pet store, you're still buying from a breeder generally, unless you're buying a wild caught reptile, but generally speaking they are selling animals from breeders. Sometimes though they're kept in questionable conditions for however long they're in a pet store. Truth of the matter is, we need pet stores. There are a lot of things that you can get online, but as a brand new reptile keeper, if you've just got one reptile for example, you might need crickets a few times a week. Ordering 6 crickets at a time online is just not doable. So you're gonna need a local pet shop. And there are good pet shops and there are bad pet shops. Support the good ones. These are people who love this hobby. They love the animals they keep. They love supporting the reptile community in their area. Support these people. If they're obviously keeping the reptiles in terrible conditions, if the animals there are suffering, do not support this sort of business. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Overall, we just love that you love the video. We love that you're learning from the video. We love that you're choosing an excellent pet reptile based on the things that you're learning here. We love the things that we learn from you. We love the criticisms. We love the suggestions. We love it all because everything that you guys told us is going to make every video we make in the future better than the last. And so keep the suggestions coming. We're also super grateful for the encouraging words that we've gotten from so many people. Look at them all. They're everywhere. All these people. We are so thankful for the things that we've heard from you. Please keep telling us the things that you want to see, things you want to hear, the animals you want to hear about, and we will keep these videos coming. Remember, like, subscribe, check out our other videos, leave us comments, and if you have a comment specifically for Houdini, just make it out to Houdini. Dear Houdini, I don't like that they called you a turtle, because I know you're a tortoise. Houdini will write you back and say, thank you for your comment. Tortoises are a type of turtle, and we'll talk to you soon. Be free, Houdini. Spectacular, 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 spectacular. From Reddit user hoorayexplosions.
Hooray.
Ah.
Oh my gosh. Please don't bite me.
Another, oh yeah. So that we can keep educating and we can keep this amazing hobby going.
Can we redo that? Also,
that's got to be Owen.
I hate to ask this. Is your mic bumping against the table at all?
I don't think so.